Good evening. My name is Nanaya Obeng, and I am the curator for tonight's Aircast on the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee. I'm currently a senior at George Mason University and a former Schar School Global Politics Fellow and intern for Democracy on Air, a nonpartisan nonprofit that is supporting the Virginia On Air governance and election hub at va.onair.cc. Tonight's Aircast is being live streamed and recorded. After the Aircast, there will be a short demo to show you how to learn more about the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee, our featured guests, and the Virginia On Air Hub. The recorded video will be archived on the Virginia On Air website and on our YouTube channel. Our host for tonight is Senator Barbara Favola. Barbara Favola was first elected senator for the 31st District in 2012. The 31st District includes the city of Fairfax and parts of Fairfax, Arlington, and Loudoun counties. Senator Favola is the chair of the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee and is a member of the Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, Local Government, Transportation, and Rules Committees. Senator Favola has been a vigorous supporter of universal human rights throughout her public life. Welcome, Senator Favola. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Nanaya. I'm delighted to be here. Just one quick little minor correction. I don't represent Fairfax City, but I represent portions of Loudoun County. So I have portions of Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun, but I don't sort of flow into Fairfax City. I love you anyways, though. So.
Before we discuss the Rehab and Social Services Committee's work, I would like to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
So my first question is, why did you get involved in politics?
Oh, well, I've been involved in politics for over 20 years in elected office. When I first came to Washington, D.C., I was a presidential management intern, which is now called the Presidential Fellow Program, which I understand George Mason will probably have some graduates, I hope, that get into that program. So I started a federal career and moved to Virginia and got married. My son actually was born with a learning disability, and that got me involved in politics. When he was a very early age, I looked around for services. I got involved in the public schools. At the time, there was a federal law that passed, which is basically guaranteed all children and children who were on IEPs a public school education, if you will, an integrated education. So I started helping the school board at the time understand this federal law and implement it. And I gathered a following. There were other parents interested in this issue as well. And an opening came on the Arlington County Board, and I ran for that position and served on the Arlington governing body, the county board, for 14 years, and then ran for the state senate. So I got involved because of an issue, and I wanted to ensure that children, regardless of what their IEPs may have or what their needs might be, got a quality education.
That's awesome, Senator. My next question will be, what is something you would say is your most significant accomplishment?
Well, I am most proud of legislation I passed. It took a couple years to require Virginia to participate in a federal program. It's called Fostering Futures, which helps our foster youth who age out of the foster care system. Our youth age out at 18, and in Fostering Futures allows the state to draw down some federal money so these youth can continue to receive financial support while they go to school or go through some kind of workforce training. And it is absolutely critically important because children at the age of 18 can't just go out and support themselves on their own. And we did an evaluation of the statistics on how many of our foster youth were homeless at the age of 18, and then very vulnerable to human trafficking and to substance abuse. So I was most proud of that legislation. And I've worked on other things, specifically regarding climate control. And I was very, very happy about that. And I guess my other big accomplishment that I brag about a lot is the Clean Energy Plan, which brings the state of Virginia, both public and private entities, into a net zero carbon emission by 2045. And I guess I'll stop there. I could continue to speak, but you don't want to hear all of my all of my accomplishments in one sitting.
Yes, they definitely all do sound very interesting. And I especially like the clean energy one, because I do think it's very important to address climate change.
Yeah.
My next question is, what is the most important new legislation that you've supported?
The new legislation? Well, we recently passed legislation that actually implements a credit earned system for those who have been convicted of nonviolent crimes and they are serving time in our prison system. I am most proud of the fact that legislation passed, which will allow them to earn credits to reduce their sentence for good behavior, for participation in reentry programs, for educational achievement. And I think that really is going to move us forward in a way that enables our folks who are in prison to participate in rehabilitative strategies and to be rewarded for making good choices. So, and again, I think that's going to be a transformational piece of legislation, and I'm looking forward to seeing that implemented. Next question.
Sounds great. The last and next question would be, how can the public get more engaged in and impact our democracy?
Well, it's absolutely critical that the public vote. And I am very distressed over state legislatures that are, passing voter suppression laws. I think, at the end of the day, a democracy is its strongest when as many people as possible who are governed by this republic actually exercise their voice. It's important that lawmakers hear all different perspectives, and it's important that lawmakers be held accountable by the various constituency groups. I was very proud to be part of a coalition in 2020 that really made voter access accessible. We removed the photo identification requirement. We allowed no excuse absentee voting. We allowed in-person voting 45 days before the election. And then with the pandemic, we allowed drop boxes. And all of these factors taken together really enabled people to vote. And we also made Election Day a state holiday. And I feel really good about those changes. I think I think the more people involved in our system, the stronger it is, the more sunshine will be shown, and the more accountable lawmakers will be. So I want to remind you, there's a primary on June 8th. And in Virginia, you do not register by party. So if you choose to vote in the primary, there will be the Democratic candidates on the ballot. And I would encourage, again, I would encourage those who are interested to participate in the June 8th primary. And voting is going on now.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
Check your local registrar page, voting registrar pages.
Yes. All right. Now we're going to dive into some questions concerning the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee.
Okay.
So first, we'd like to know if you could give us a brief overview of the work that the committee does.
Sure. There are three general areas that the committee has oversight over. One is the Alcohol and Beverage Control Authority, and that's the authority that actually regulates, the distribution and retail of alcohol beverages. So that's sort of a big component. The committee also has oversight over the social services safety net for our most vulnerable. So programs such as the tuition assistance grant program, the food stamps program, sort of the workforce programs for those who are moving off of TANF. All of those things, those social service programs are under the purview of the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee. And the third area is the operations of the state prison and oversight over state and local or regional and local jails falls under Rehabilitation and Social Services. So the prison programs and also parole and how the parole board should expect to operate, I guess, would fall under the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee. So it's a very broad purview. This last session, the legalization of marijuana, that bill came through my committee. And the bulk of the bill was under the jurisdiction of Rehabilitation and Social Services. The part that had to deal with the expungement of a criminal record went through the Judiciary Committee. So it's a very interesting scope, I think, and it brings in issues that I care very much about. The other thing that the committee, under the social service rubric, childcare and the licensure of childcare providers, the training of childcare providers, what should be expected in terms of the developmental programming and developmentally appropriate programming in a childcare setting. All of that would fall under Rehabilitation and Social Services. So I'm very busy.
But I believe that all the work you do is really great. And I think the committee is a really important committee in helping to establish these services that are available to families in Virginia. So, yeah.
Yeah, we try to, in my view, I try to, guide legislation that really will enable an individual to achieve self-sufficiency under the social service component of the program. And then under the prison reform, again, 90% of those in prison will be released one day, and we have an obligation to ensure that they're ready to reintegrate into society.
Yes. Could you give us a few highlights from this winter's General Assembly?
Well, certainly, the legalization of marijuana was the big bill that sort of took everybody's time. It was the largest bill some of the very senior lawmakers had seen in 20 years. So that, let me just say, that bill legalizes the simple possession, which is 1 ounce or less, legalizes the simple possession of marijuana for adults age 21 or older starting July 1. And it does allow an individual to have up to 4 marijuana plants per household starting July 1. And then the actual sale and distribution of marijuana in Virginia will take place January 1st, 2024. So that's sort of the bill in a nutshell. And there was also an expungement piece. So individuals who had been arrested on felony marijuana charges, where that simple possession is now going to be legal, their records would be expunged. So there was very much a criminal justice piece to this legalization of marijuana. And then I will say, in our previous General Assembly session, the one in August, we focused a lot on criminal justice reform. Again, this was shortly after the George Floyd incident. And, you know, we really made some, I think, very important and very needed changes to our criminal justice code. You know, where no-knock warrants now will be prohibited. We're requiring de-escalation in the training programs for our police officers. We're enabling local governments to set up civilian review boards with the opportunity to go to a court and ask to subpoena police records if that's what they feel is necessary to understand a situation. So we've really come a long way. And of course, I was a chief co-patron on the training bill for police officers, and I am just hoping that we can make a huge difference. I also played a big role in crafting a grant program that will fund a different type of policing, where police officers can respond with a mental health worker. So they call that a co-responder model. And jurisdictions may choose to have a mental health unit, a mobile mental health unit, or some other way of integrating mental health services into these 911 calls. I mean, we have found that, you know, probably a third of the calls coming into 911 are strictly mental health based calls. In other words, somebody is having a mental health episode, they're acting in a strange or frightening way, if you will, and a family member doesn't know who else to call but 911. And there's now acknowledgement that police officers are not trained, nor will they ever be able to be as equipped to really handle somebody suffering from a severe mental health illness or a mental health episode. So I think that's really, that's transformational if we can change the way we look at policing and the way we actually execute policing in our jurisdictions. So I'll stop there and let you ask me another question.
I think that all sounds really great. I definitely do really like how Virginia has become a state that is leading on such legislation, especially concerning policing and also the marijuana bill and all these bills that are like really going to change the, you know, roadmap for the world, for the country. So yeah, I definitely do appreciate the work that you do in the Senate.
I just want to point out one other thing. Gun safety was a very big issue, again, and that carried over into our last session. I worked very hard to remove firearms from individuals who had been convicted of an assault and battery of a household member. I succeeded, but the person would give up the firearm for 3 years, and then the right to carry a firearm would be reinstated. But there were a number of gun safety laws that we passed. We really closed the loopholes on universal background checks. So you can't just go to a gun show and not go through a universal background check, which was great. We're allowing local governments to pass ordinances to prohibit firearms in these public places like community centers where you might have children recreating. So that's just a thumbnail sketch of what we accomplished in areas that you all have been reading about in the papers.
Certainly. I will now be moving on to having the audience ask their questions. So the first question will be from Haley Falk. She's an English major at George Mason University.
Hi, Haley. Welcome.
Thank you. It's been so good hearing you talk.
Thank you.
So my question was, do you think that Senate Bill 1179 on ending for-profit prison management in Virginia could possibly be reintroduced in the next General Assembly session?
Yes, I do. There's I voted to end for-profit prison management. I do think that the state can exercise much more control over the programming and the quality of the staff if the state actually operates the prison. It was a rigorously debated bill, and one of the factors that contributed to the defeat of the bill in my committee was the fact that employees around the area where there's one state prison being operated with a private contractor right now, and the community around that prison actually rallied advocates and others to defeat the bill based on the premise that jobs would be lost. So so that was that was a big thread in the reason why the bill went down. We tried to make the point that, state jobs, in fact, would pay more and you would get better training, but there's no guarantee that somebody who was, lost the job because a private contractor left would necessarily be hired by the state. And the fear of that job loss was a very big hurdle.
All right. Our next question will be from Marwa El-Alawi, a psychology major at Northern Virginia Community College.
Oh, hi, Mara. I'm sorry, I can't.
It's okay, Marwa. I'll read your question for you. All right. Her question is, what are some of the provisions of Senate Bill 1405 that establishes the Get Skilled, Get a Job, Give Back Fund and program?
Oh, the G3 bill. Yes, I worked very hard on that and worked with Governor Northam. So I'm so glad you asked that question. It's one of those transformational bills I should have brought up, saying I was proud of. Well, what that bill does is individuals who graduate from high school in good academic standing, if their income is up to 400% of the federal poverty level, which is actually a pretty generous scale, will be able to go to the community college at no cost, as long as they draw down whatever grants they may be eligible for. If they're eligible for Pell Grants or they're eligible for a scholarship, the state will make up the difference. So there would not be a tuition cost passed along to these individuals. The caveat is these individuals would be expected to go into our high demand workforce tracks. And we've defined that very broadly. Teachers, especially math and science teachers, but all teachers, early childhood educators, certainly computer programming, cybersecurity tracks, and nursing, and then of course a lot of the healthcare technician type of tracks. So there are a number of tracks that would probably be very appealing to individuals, and if they again meet that income limit, could get a associate's degree. And what I really like about the program is students could tap into an emergency fund if something happens that could prohibit them from continuing their education. If there was a financial catastrophe, if, their car broke down, they missed their rent, childcare bills were piling up. We do have, I think it's up to $1,000 a semester, an emergency fund that an individual student can draw down. Because what we found is so often it's just life gets in the way of, these very capable students from finishing an associate's degree or a certificate. And it's just very, it's heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking. I know many of these students, and I know that, they're compromising their future over, a broken car that, somehow they've got to fix, and feel they have to work more hours to fix it, and then they drop out of school. So I feel really good about that program. The other thing I want to say is, for the past 3 years, I have been a force behind the what we would call the dual degree program. So what this does is it sets aside money to train high school teachers to deliver community college level courses in the high school. So some of our school systems in the Northern Virginia region are really tapping in to the dual degree program revenue, and they're offering a lot of community college courses right in their high school. And some students, if they can manage it correctly and work with a guidance counselor, can figure out how to graduate with almost an associate's degree at the same time they get a high school diploma or a certificate in one of the trades. And I think that's just been a very big deal that I've worked on. There were lawmakers before me, Senator Colgan, who's been a strong friend of George Mason. Lawmakers before me actually paved the way, but I really latched onto that and really pushed to get more funding. Great question. Thank you.
Our next question is from Todd Delegate. He is the Democracy on Air Chair and holds a PhD from George Mason.
Hi, Senator Bulova.
Oh my goodness, you're a doctorate. Oh, nice.
Every now and then I remember that.
Oh, I will call you doctor.
Right. And thanks so much for being on. This has really been an interesting discussion. A lot of really fascinating topics that you've covered so far. So I'm particularly curious to hear your thoughts about SB 1301, limiting the use of isolated confinement in state facilities. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on also what prevented it from passing after coming out of committee, and what you think the future might be for bills, related bills in the future.
Todd, thank you for asking that question. It's a really important question. And let me just say, I philosophically believe that we should not be using isolated confinement, at least not for any extended period of time. I think it is very damaging to an individual's mental health. I think it is particularly harmful to youth. And I would define youth as individuals under the age of 21. So it's got to stop. It's cruel and unusual punishment. Now, the arguments that came up related to a bill that Senator Morrissey actually was the chief patron on, but I have been a co-patron on several of these bills as well. Sometimes there's situations where, an inmate is having behavioral episodes and could be a danger to himself or others, and has to be segregated from the rest of the population. And the way we have designed our prisons, isolated confinement seems to be the only approach, because we don't have other housing units that are, separate, which would not, constitute sort of isolated confinement. And then we've got situations where inmates may actually be at risk of being, of being attacked or harmed by other inmates. So for their own protection, they're moved to an isolated confinement. And then lastly, you would have inmates that I suppose the prisons might define as punishment or in need of punishment. They move them to isolated confinement. I do not think isolated confinement should be used for punishment, period. And now in terms of the other two reasons, if an inmate may harm himself or others, or an inmate may be vulnerable to being harmed, I think we need to create a different type of housing module that, would allow an individual to still gain protection, but not be confined to a small cell. Now, of course, that's going to take a redesign. That will take some money. It'll take training on the part of our prison staff. And more importantly, many of these prisoners really do require long-term mental health services. And I would like to see those services incorporated into the state prison system. And I think that would go a long way in sort of solving the need for what some of the experts say is isolated confinement. So it's a very complicated issue. I just outlined some of the debate that we heard in the Rehabilitation and Social Services. In large part, the State Department of Corrections believes that the fiscal impact of such a bill, even if you were to phase it in over time, would be pretty significant. So, but that's not going to sway me from embracing the concept that solitary confinement, as we currently know it, has to end. So it's a long road ahead. Is a short answer to that, but I appreciate you asking the question.
Great. Our next question is from Susan Dressler, a leader within the Friends of Alexandria Mental Health Center.
Oh, yes. Hi, Susan. Hi. Thank you for joining this.
Hello, I don't see myself. Can you hear me? Oh,
yes, I can. Yes.
Yes. Hi. I'm really excited and want to thank you for all the hard work that you have done on these bills and programs. They're wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
My question also relates to mental health. Discussing, I'm assuming that inmates with mental health conditions do receive services, mental health services, while they're incarcerated. But I'm wondering what provisions are in place for them to have follow-up services when they are released, and how is that handled?
I think that's a great question. Thank you so much for answering that. If an inmate does demonstrate the need for a mental health assessment that is provided in our state prison system, and there is some mental health treatment follow-up after that initial evaluation, I do not believe that the state provides an adequate mental health safety net in our state prison. And I think that's probably true in the regional and local jails as well. So we need to sort of fix that. We need to fix the in-house inadequacy. And then your regional and local jails usually contract out with the local CSBs to provide follow-up mental health care. At least that's done in the jails up here in Northern Virginia. So, and that is a routine part of discharge planning. So there you are, but it, again, when you've got individuals that need so many services when they're re-entering society, they need adequate housing, they need probably more job training, they need the support of a community and family members. And yes, they will need mental health services as well. I think it's very hard to provide that comprehensive package, although it's absolutely necessary, or your recidivism rate goes up. So we are working, part of the role of my committee is to ensure that our state-run prison programs and the guidelines provided to our regional local jails actually meet the societal goal of rehabilitating our prisoners, our offenders, and enabling them to re-enter society in a way that will allow them to embrace a productive and life, productive and constructive life.
Great.
Thank you for the questions. Great question.
Our next question is from David Drachler, and he's a member and former president of the Northern Virginia chapter of the ACLU.
Hi, Senator.
Oh, hi. It's nice to see you. It's quite a team you have, David and Susan. Yeah. Wow, it's a strong team.
Thank you very much for taking our questions.
Sure.
I'm unclear on the status of parole in Virginia. I thought that former Governor George Allen had abolished parole, but I saw that quite a number of bills before your committee mentioned parole and the responsibilities of the parole board. Can you explain what the status is?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, individuals, can be eligible for parole. The bills before my committee this past session actually dealt with the obligation of the parole board to notify the Commonwealth Attorney before somebody was released, to notify family members a certain number of days before. Although those laws were already on the books, the bills before my committee allowed that notification to be through electronic means or email. There was a bill that came before my committee that will require the parole board to post a report, monthly report on the website that not only identifies individuals who have been determined eligible for parole, but to state the reason why, what their offense was and the reason why they're eligible. So we're moving more towards a more transparent approach to the operation of the parole board. And that's what the bills did before my committee.
Awesome.
And they passed, and they did pass. I mean, they went through conference, the governor saw them, they came back, they were tweaked. And so we've been making progress though.
Okay. Our last question is from Marina Anwari. She's a business major at Northern Virginia Community Colleges.
Okay.
Hi, Senator. It's been great.
Hi, Marina. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's been great listening in on everything you've been advocating for and all the hard work you've been putting in. So I just wanted to thank you on that.
Thank you.
My question was, out of all the bills passed during the 2021 General Assembly session, which bill are you most excited to see implemented?
Of all the bills that passed, well, I have to say that my paid family leave bill, I desperately want to get a paid family leave program up and running in Virginia. Senator Boysko has been very active and taken a leading role on that. I have taken a leading role on paid sick days, but I did get a bill through that does direct the Bureau of Insurance to sit down with stakeholders and figure out what we need to do to get private insurance companies to enter the market. So companies can buy insurance to allow them to offer the paid family leave. So we'll see what that report comes up with. I think it's another step forward. And I've been working with the Virginia Interfaith Center on paid sick days. They are very dedicated to this. And one thing that I do feel very good about, and I'm most excited about, it was a budget amendment and authorizing, but now our home care workers who are paid through Medicaid will be able to access up to 5 sick days a year. And that is critically important. These are home care workers that are going into homes where we've got elderly, sick, disabled individuals, folks who are, medically compromised. And for a home care worker to not be able to stay home when he or she is sick, I think puts the patient at risk. And I do understand that some of these patients need 24-hour care, and the home care agencies will have to work at getting, substitutes in. But we felt it was really important that these home care workers be able to access paid sick days. And we actually put money into the Medicaid budget for that. So we're making progress. There's some big issues I really care about. And I think you all do too. Your questions have been great. You've allowed me to expand on things that I had on my list, and I appreciate that. So kudos to the George Mason team that actually pulled this together and actually produced this program. I feel very good about being a guest on your program. So.
Yes, thank you so much, Senator Favola, for hosting our Aircast and answering those questions. I have a comment from one of the people who is watching the live stream at the moment, and it's from Dr. Meredith Carey, and she says, "Thank you for your efforts on behalf of improving mental health services in public schools, protecting women vis-a-vis domestic violence, gun safety, work training, and our right to privacy."
Wow, that. Thank you. You did better than I did in just sort of putting a parameter around the things I've worked for. So thank you so much for that comment. And I will continue to work hard on your behalf and on the behalf of Virginians across the Commonwealth. So thank you.
All right.
Thanks again. Yeah, that was a really, God, so much interesting material and really worth knowing. So many important things going on these issues in the state.
Well, I hope I tried to give you some insight as to the debate. And, there are a lot of good ideas, but there's always another side and there's always an angle that you haven't considered. So I tried to make this as informative as I could. I thought the questions were excellent, and you all did some homework, so I appreciate that. And I think your professor should note your diligence. Does that help you?
You're here.
Yes.
Thank you, Nananya. I hope I said your name correctly, Nananya?
Nanaya, but yeah.
Nanaya, you did a great job, so thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Senator Favola for hosting our Aircast, audience for your participation, and I hope that you all found the Aircast interesting and informative and engaging.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The homepage post highlights what's streaming today and upcoming in recent Aircasts. Other homepage posts are accessible by selecting the thumbnails below. For example, this post on the General Assembly has links to all the recorded sessions, various articles about this year's session, and all the bills passed this year by interest areas. To learn more about the Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee and other Virginia Senate committees, select governance, VA Senate committees, top post, To view the committee you're interested in, select the featured image or post title to go to its post view. Committee posts include recorded committee hearings, detailed listings of all the bills passed by committee, and commissions and boards related to a committee's lawmaking. You can learn about your representatives by selecting Who Represents Me and typing in your street address. And then select a representative. In this post, you can learn more about Senator Barbara Favola, her political experience, and her positions on issues. You can also ask questions, make suggestions, give endorsements, and make comments on topics of interest to you. Go to va.onair.tc to learn about, discuss, and become more engaged with Virginia governance and elections. Select the VA logo to subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch the About US On Air Network video to learn more about our 50 state hubs and central US.onair.tc hub. Thanks for making your democracy better. Have a nice evening.